What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to CanesCast. I'm Phil, here with Garrett. We're ready to bring you another great episode of a nice back and forth between Garrett and I breaking down Canes football. So we're going to get rolling. And Garrett, I want to know right off the bat what your thoughts were about the USF game, considering they talked a whole lot of smoke. And let's be real, I mean, they were, were they ever really little brother? I mean, they're just another team in the state that we knocked off. So that's why the We Run the State shirt made a reappearance today, guys, just so you know. It will be saved again for when we take down our most hated rival right around Halloween. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, Garrett, what are some of your thoughts on that big beatdown at USF?
Well, Isaiah Horton was obviously the star, so that's why I went ahead and put him in behind me there. He really got screwed out of a second touchdown there, which would have been,
Big time.
a pretty big cap to a great night for him. USF did put us, into a little bit of a bind up until halftime. Had they not missed that field goal, they would have been within, 5 points, 6 or 4 points or whatever it would have been going into the half. I think they ran out of gas. Halftime, we definitely turned up. We didn't let them score after that point. I think it's a really good test for who we're going to go ahead and face this next week in Virginia Tech. Byron Brown is a big physical running quarterback. I think that's exactly what we're going to see in Kyron Jones for Virginia Tech. So I'd like to hope that the Canes will be ready. It's a Friday night game. It's not Saturday, so it's a day early for both teams. It's at home. So that's really what I take from this last game. It's, too many penalties, I think, but when you win 50-15, there's not a lot to complain about. Cam Ward put on a show. I know everyone's seen his video where he basically told the defense where they were running, pointed right to the hole where they were, going to run a third touchdown for Jamie Martinez. It's pretty gangster. So that's what I liked. I like to see a little bit of that swag. As long as you back it up, you're gonna face harder and harder games each week. If you keep on winning and you stay undefeated, you're going to get everyone's best shot. That's what we, as Miami, have not ever been ready for in the last 20 seasons plus. You're going to get it from Virginia Tech. I understand they haven't played great. They lost to Rutgers. It's just what happens. This is a rivalry game. It's not like necessarily Florida State, but Virginia Tech has been a thorn in the side for a very long time. It takes me back to a Logan Thomas running all over our ass. He's a tight end in the NFL. He wasn't even a great quarterback, but he certainly put on and whooped our ass that day. So I don't want to see any of that. Certainly, I hope the boys are ready for a big game because they're going to be coming with it. And USF brought it, but I think that coach is an extremely good coach. He had their guys running a play in almost 7 seconds. That's pretty unbelievable. So I think what we just went through was a 4.5-hour game. So there was attrition, there was guys cramping up and going down. It just took forever. There wasn't any major injuries. I believe on our end, there was guys that didn't play, like Jalen Rivers. Ruben Bain wasn't back. Damari Brown wasn't back. So big players still were not in that game, and we still were able to handle it.
Yeah. I think that the USF thing it was a great test just because, like you said, of how much up tempo they run. You can always tell the up tempo. You and I talked about this when they're trying to dissect the play that just happened, and as the camera is trying to show any kind of semblance of a replay or any kind of anything, they got to cut. And the crew is all of a sudden Lewis Riddick, and these guys are talking about the next play. It's going real quick. I mean, it just is there's no rest. It's just bang, 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 bang. And thankfully, Miami's not really going to see an offense like that at all the rest of the way, as far as I can tell, unless a team tries to run that on us. But it's tough, right? We play in that element. Now, the tempo thing is the equalizer, but they ran out of gas. I mean, they got as many injuries and little nicked up and stuff, like more so than we did. And it was just a talent discrepancy reared its head, and they couldn't do it. Now, if that was run like that and they were keeping it close, then you might worry a little bit, because there were some times in the first half they took the air out of the ball. And it was just felt like we were just waiting to get the ball back. It was best case scenario. I mean, Grammatico was booting kicks from 50 plus yards. So it was best case scenario that he missed right before half just to save that momentum. But after half, we won it, right? We shut him out. We dominated the game. I will say you and I have a difference of opinion there, because of Ward's first pass to the game, but Ward should definitely not have that extra interception because of the craziness and randomness that was George just tossing the ball. So for Ward's stats, as we always touch on, the dude's been the best quarterback in football, and that's not debatable, really. But I mean, there's other guys that have played great, but you know what he brings, and we've talked about it ad nauseum. Like his pocket presence is ridiculous. That there was a play right before half that he's getting the rush off the edge. He scrambles outside, and he's kind of standing by himself. It's 1-on-1, and he just kind of steps back, boom, and you see him, pop out, and it ended up being a penalty on that play. But there was another play where he stepped away from pressure. He's just so calm when he does it. He's just it's calm. He's calm. It's effortless. It's awesome to watch. But we won't see a test like that what USF presents. And would USF? Here's the question: is Virginia Tech is ACC play, and that's a big step, right? I mean, getting a conference play and making sure we keep our footing. You referenced, we've stubbed our toe multiple times in the past. The Canes teams were that have been really good have stubbed their toe, and they've let that dictate the season, and it was kind of like and then you kind of just see it the effort mail in. I don't think we have that team. I think the playoff restructuring and the addition of teams is going to make it so a lot less teams kind of punt after you lose a game or something like that. But I just think this team is too much. We're too talented. Would USF is Virginia Tech had a lot of hype going into the season, but would USF beat Virginia Tech? I mean, they pushed Alabama. They hung with us for.
I think so. I mean, they played two, in essence, top 10 teams. Have played pretty well in both of those games at different points.
They played better against
Alabama pulled away. We pulled away. But I think that, again, I think that's a good coach running a great program at USF. I don't think they're, necessarily as deep as Miami is, but
no, there's no question.
I haven't seen a whole lot of ACC teams outside of Clemson started to play better after the Georgia beatdown. That I think they'd be one of the top 5 teams in the ACC should they be in our conference. So I think it was an extremely good test. I really like the fact that we went out there and absolutely dominated them. In essence, if you look over the whole of the game and the score, is really all Miami. But that's a great game to get ready for what's coming next, and that is ACC play. Miami has got to put it all together. This is boom or bust. You cannot stumble against the North Carolinas, the Dukes, the in this case, Virginia Tech. So come out, show your dominance. Let's, get back to the old days where we were running, 50 straight down everyone's throats every single game. I don't see any reason. We have not seen any reason why that won't happen this week. But this is a big test. I mean, again, it's a rivalry game. It's Cam Ward and Kyron Drones are cousins. So you got to imagine both players are going to be playing their best ball of the season, I would think. And Cam Ward has just a couple passes here and there. I'm sure he would love to have back. There's, just a smidge of connection that's been missed, and he still played amazing. So could you imagine where he would be had he got a couple of those connections made? He might already be close to almost 2,000 yards and, 16, 17 touchdowns, 18 touchdowns if he gets the one and runs it in there a little bit harder. So I do believe this is a game where both these two quarterbacks are going to show out for really each other. I've watched, if you watched Shadir Sanders's podcast, they were all on his first show technically together. So you understand that there's some friendship there, but that those kinds of relationships bring out the best in both of them.
For sure. I mean, Virginia Tech presents a big thing for me that is we haven't seen yet. Is before I get to that though, I want to go back to the fact that in the beginning of this, when we first started, right, we were talking about how Florida, presented a big test just because it was SEC football, and we would have wished that we could have potentially had some of those warm-up games before we played Florida. Well, it turns out we came out and played just fine, and then we had those warm-up games and played great still. And then USF was a good test, and then we played great still. So we've been answering the bell. So you're right. It's a good contest going into Virginia Tech, but something Virginia Tech has that we haven't seen yet to me, or because Florida had a lot of questions in their secondary, is their two corners. So Strong and Delane. Yeah, they're two outside. They're two cover corners. So those two guys are pretty damn good, and they're probably the best secondary, arguably, comprise the best secondary that we might see all season. I mean, as far as talent, NFL talent, those guys are at the top of the list when you look across the schedule. So I just, how does our passing game respond to that? I don't know that they're going to care because I feel like we have too many weapons. We have more weapons than you can cover. You're going to put one on Restrepo, you're going to put one on Horton. Well, there's George, there's our tight ends, there's, the running backs out of the backfield. There's so much that we throw at teams and Brown, so it's like what are we going to do? What are we going to cover? And then the running game hasn't been overly impressive, but it hasn't had to be because it's your Ward's tearing it up through the air. I think the running game's perfectly capable of doing it, but this game is a 17.5 point favorite that I've seen 18.5 points. So can Miami cover that spread? I mean, if you win by 15, 14 points, that's a big win, but can Miami cover the spread again? I think our average margin of victory is in the 40s right now because of the 62-0, that average, it, lengthens.
And again, I still say that Florida A&M was a better team than Ball State. So depending on who you watch or your content, you'll see people leave that game out. But I don't think that's a bad game to keep on in the stats. I think we played really well. But you know what I mean? Though all four of the games have been good for lots of different reasons. And again, now having going into the ACC play, we got 8 games against guys more or less that know you. Don't know this team specifically because there's a great deal of different players from last year. So that's what I want to see. I don't want to see Miami of yesteryear that is can't get out of their own way, can't get up for a big game, can't play to their potential. Let's finally put it all together, show that we are, gonna dominate for the rest of the season. This is a huge a huge warning bell to the rest of the games that we will play, that if we can go out here and wipe the floor with Virginia Tech, everyone else should be on notice. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that's what we really want to see, right?
Everybody, you mentioned answering the bell, and the last time I think we answered the bell consistently like that was 2017 against Virginia Tech and then against Notre Dame. And against Virginia Tech, it was a primetime game, although it was Saturday, not Friday, blackout, which is what this is going to be, Miami nights. It's ringing eerily similar. And we came out, I was at that game, you were at the Notre Dame game, and it was back to back, boom, just answer it. And it was vaulted us into a stratosphere that we hadn't seen in a while. And speaking of a while, this team has 50 plus points in 3 straight games. It's the first time that's been done since when? The greatest team in college football history. So there's a lot of things we like.
And to being up 2017, no offense to Malik Rozier, because put it all together, had a great season, but there's no comparison as far as skill wise and actual putting forth actual production. Cam Ward is extremely, extremely talented in the passing game, where Rozier was able to hit big plays when it was really crunch time, but we were skirting through some of those games until the end of the season. You know what I mean? There was a couple really close calls. And that Florida State team we beat that year was all defense. They had a terrible offense when we played that game, but they still played us pretty close. Well, so again, this is a totally different animal. So 2017 is our best record in 22 years plus. So yes, that kind of harkens back, but this is a totally different setup going into this week.
That was the last time we answered the bell, though. And like you said, there were multiple close calls. Like I said, that Georgia Tech game, catching that ball in the rain that was basically tipped to catch a 4th down conversion. There was multiple games that it's like, oh man, we shouldn't have won that, but we kept finding ways to win, and that team was kind of a product of the top end talent. But what happened is we got hurt. We started losing these impact players, Malik Young, Richards, different guys like that. And it changed what the season was, and it changed what the team was capable of. And that's why I've spoken to you. We've talked about that. The transfer portal needs to be, to me, and I've said this forever, that it needs to be a supplement to your thing. What Florida State has done, what Florida State's doing has made it their boom or bust. I feel like the development and recruiting has not been done at a high enough level where you see that in Miami, where you supplement with these pieces, but look at how deep they are. Bain hasn't played since the first series of the Gators game. They're dominating. The rest of these guys are showing out. Neither is Damari Brown.
And again, those Hurricanes teams in the past, that's what we'd be talking about. Oh, we slipped up in this game, but that's because our three best players are on the sidelines,
Exactly.
putting excuses forward rather than just, hey, find a way to win no matter what. Again, this team is built very well. As you've seen the last 4 games, of course, we could suspect all we want going into the season, but now that you've seen the production, Sam Brown's shown up. Simeon Barrow's played amazing. Tyler Barron's been a force. So
Also, yeah,
yes, and again, now you have the young guys coming in. Jordan Lyle has the longest run in Miami Hurricanes history, and dude,
sprint.
look, he was cooking on that touchdown. So you alluded to it earlier. I wanted to bring up the point of the running game. You can be one or the other. You can be a run that sets up the pass, or in this case, Miami this year is a pass that's setting up the run. At the end of the game like that, even though you got backups in, a guy can get loose on the sideline and go take it the distance because they're really hammering down the middle quite a bit, right? I
Yeah.
would like to give a shout out to guys. I've have questions. Shannon Dawson has brought it this year. He's really on point. He has a great quarterback to work with. In the broadcast, you've heard that he has a lot of freedom at the line to change and audible into other plays. And as Louis Riddick put it, or somebody put it, is sometimes even Shannon Dawson doesn't know what's actually going to happen because of the freedom that he allows Cam Moore to have. So, and again, I no matter how you get it done, whether you run for 300 yards or whether you pass for 400, right? Dominating is dominating, whichever way it goes. This is obviously a very pass-oriented team. The pass protection seems to be a little stronger than the run game. But again, at the end of the game, if you're going to run out the game because you got a 3-touchdown lead, who cares? Who cares how the stats get there? It's really interesting to see Jordan Lyle technically is the leading rusher, and Damian Martinez just has hammering a couple of touchdowns, but he's really still 4 games in has not found a really good running performance. I don't believe yet.
I think he
Is
will,
this
though.
is this the week? Is
I think
this
he
the
will.
week?
Well,
Hopefully it is.
a hat trick and touchdowns is a pretty good game still, though. 3 scores is pretty good. But yeah, he hasn't
But
had
at
his
that time, he had like
100
9 yards
plus.
total. So
Yeah, but yeah, he hasn't had his 100-yard game with a couple touchdowns, but it's coming. Honestly, I think I speak for us and all Canes fans now. Right now, we want to see Ward continue to kill it because we want Ward to bring home the Heisman. We want Ward to be a top draft pick, all that stuff. But uh I don't care if we win the game 3-0 as long as we win. Not in a game like this, but when it comes down to it, if we're playing a team in the playoffs, like whatever it takes to get the win, get the win. That's all we care about at the end of the day. But
I'd like to say you see Cam Ward's highlights going at the Heisman trophy presentation where he's pointing back at guys, you
yeah,
know, basically talking shit. So I love that. I really love what he's got going on this year. Certainly, we want to keep the passing numbers up. I suspect that's probably going to happen as long as he's in the game. I would think he's probably going to continue the hot hand.
yeah, but there'll be a game. There will be. I just imagine there'll be a game where he doesn't play as well and people freak out. But I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna freak out. The guy's shown enough. He's a difference maker, and even in a game where he struggles, he's still gonna get his. That's just kind of what he has shown. You spoke about Barrow. I want to talk about how big of an impact that's been real quick because for years I feel like Miami's had talent at linebacker, but hasn't been able to flash. I think when you have a dominant defensive lineman like this, it's really allowing our linebackers to kind of make that splash and show up and be kind of like, oh, this is what it's like when Miami has good linebackers, and we've had a ton of them. So I think that's pretty cool that we're getting back to that. It makes the dominant defensive line being dominant in the trenches just opens things up for everybody, and it sets things up to be good for a while. If Miami, regardless of who's behind center, can give the guy time like Ward's been able to have. Now, again, we'll see varying defensive fronts. Florida has a talented defensive front, but we'll see varying defensive fronts throughout the season, and some will push. And Ward hasn't really been sacked. He hasn't been touched. And what's really cool about the stats you mentioned earlier is that every single game Ward has ended on the bench. He hasn't had to finish a single game because our margin of victory has been so big. And that's a great problem to have. And to me, you look at those, imagine if he's finishing those. What if he's throwing 6-7 touchdowns in a game? I mean, his stats could be out of this world right now. And I'm glad he hasn't had to, injuries and otherwise. And it's been good to get these guys rest and more guys reps. That makes us a deeper team down the road. But the start's been incredibly impressive. We're excited. Before we wrap this up, we'll do the predictions, but what's one big key to the game for you? I'll do me, and then we'll do our predictions, what we think the score will be, and then we'll wrap this up.
I'm going to say the biggest key is Maui Noah on Kyron Drones. I do believe that's Virginia Tech's strength is his mobility and his physicality. He's a big dude. Again, I alluded to that podcast that I talked about. You could tell his size. He's noticeably bigger than Shadir Sanders and Cam Ward physically. So I do think Maui Noah is going to be huge in this game. He's got to, when they meet, he's got to bring him down. We can't have, I would say Byron Brown broke a couple tackles here and there. Our linebackers, people would hit him and would slide off him. Now he didn't have huge numbers, certainly not enough to make the game close or of any capacity in the long run. But that's probably my biggest key is not falling off the Virginia Tech runners, because I think Bashal Tolan is also going to be, going to be tough. I don't want to sit here and say I think he's the best player on the team or whatnot, but I do believe that's going to be the key. No missed tackles and try to scale down some of those penalties. What about you?
The penalties are big. When you look at multiple penalty, like what do we have, like 11 dated to that everybody seems to think, and I agree to an extent, that those refs were pretty flag happy, tossing a lot of flags. They were throwing some stuff that, you're like, okay. That's fine.
I mean, again, that game was extended by an hour than is normal. I mean, 3.5 hours for a broadcast is usually, but I'm telling you, it was 4.5 hours by the time that game was over with. And there was really garbage time at the end, right?
It's tough. It's tough. And that was a big reason why the stoppage from penalties. And it was kind of like, look at what we can do. Look at what we can see. And it just kind of felt a little like that from the crew. Fine, whatever. They threw a lot of flags over a full football field worth of penalty yards. You can't have that. But that shows you, we have 11 penalties for 115 yards or whatever we had, and we still won the game by a tremendous margin. I mean, 50-15 with 35 points. Like, that's crazy. So to win like that, you're not going to win like that. And it's funny, I referenced that last week maybe the episode before, where I was like, you're going to have free games where you have a bunch of penalties and you still find a way to win it. And the talent discrepancy is obviously severe, but what did we praise in week 1 is we had 2 penalties in the toughest place to play and no false start. So the team is capable of it. I think the team, part of these penalties is just undisciplined, and the team cut back the penalties in the second half. And obviously we shut them out. So the team's capable of it. They're responding to coaching, and that's great. It's a big difference from what we've seen, but I just want to harken back to that Gators game and say, what, the team is capable. So hopefully they're on their A game, and they don't shoot themselves in the foot. I do think that they had a little more success passing. You talk about how we hemmed him up running. They had a little more success passing than I think anybody thought they would. Obviously they couldn't stop our passing attack or anything, but they had a little more success passing. So I think the Virginia Tech might kind of mimic that. I think while we think you're going to zig, they zag kind of thing. Like, he's going to hurt us with his legs, so then he hurts us.
Daryl Porter had a tough game overall, but most notably was on the flea flicker pass or statue or whatever they call it, the Philly special play.
Philly special, yeah.
If he comes down and catches that quarterback coming out of the backfield, he was humming down to get the running back and let the quarterback get behind him. Maui Noah was technically covering him, but I mean, he got outrun. But yeah. Daryl Porter really, I think, made a huge mistake in that play. Hopefully he learns from that, plays much more to his general good play. Shout out to 2 things real quickly. Was Mish Powell's interception was beautiful. Way to shut down that red zone attempt. And, I see him on the sidelines, so I want to give him props as Miles Muyang. You could tell that's one of the team guys. He's a walk-on, but it was really cool seeing him get out there and get an interception. You could see the team was really excited for him. So, that was something I wanted to mention earlier. Sorry, we had to throw that in there, but go real quickly. Yeah, go quickly to your keys for the game.
Yeah, so like on that chain making an appearance too. That was funny seeing the sideline throw the chain out there, or the crowd throw the chain at him, and he got to rock the chain for a second. I don't think Cristobal will be super pumped about that, but regardless, like I said, keys to the game. It's that for me. I think that they're going to try to get it's weather that storm. I think that we're right now an intimidating and kind of force when it comes to what Miami can bring to the table, that I think we're going to see those trick plays. I think we're going to see things like that. USF was pulling out the stops from the jump. They were hyped. The onside kick attempt, their only score was that trick play, the Philly special thing. So they're pulling out stops. And as a general rule, could USF beat Virginia Tech? We think that they might just be just as good if push comes to shove, but Virginia Tech probably has more talent from top to bottom. So those little things could hurt you if you're not disciplined, and allow a team to kind of find their rhythm and stay in a game. So I think our secondary being disciplined, and hemming up the pass attack is going to be is a big key for me. And allowing us to take over, punch them down first, and just kind of take the wind out of their sails. Let our crowd get into it. Take it from there. As far as the final score, this team has shown me. They've shown me. So I don't really want to pivot until they show me otherwise. So I'm going to say they cover, and I'm going to say they get to that, 48, 50 points again, because they're capable of it. I think it's a 48-13, 48-14 type game isn't out of the realm of possibility. And it keeps the world on notice and keeps us climbing the rankings. So until proven otherwise, I like where we're headed, and I like what I see, and I don't see any reason why they can't do it. The spread is big for a reason. I mean, Vegas thinks that Miami can really lay it on here.
I'm going to go with 35-20. I'm going to say on the other side, I think we missed the point spread, but I think it's a good performance overall and a comfortable win at the end of the day. But I just think it's going to be shortened up in the game a little bit with the running that I believe Virginia Tech's going to bring to the house. So, all I want to do is put Sandman to sleep. As long as we beat the Virginia Tech Hokies this week, covering the spread not as important, but I do think we go ahead and beat comfortably Virginia Tech this weekend.
Yeah, I don't ultimately, I don't care if, like I said, as long as we win, that's the big thing. Yeah, if you win an ugly game where you kind of play, it can hurt us. So winning comfortably is obviously better. You want to win every game by blowout fashion, but comfortably is the thing. The Sandman thing, I thought about it, but I mean, we're at home. We're not playing there. So that's why I didn't, the Sandman.
But that's their thing. So I'm saying, like,
their thing, but
put the Sandman to sleep, baby.
Yeah, that is their thing. But it's in their stadium when they're rocking. They got to come through the smoke, and that'll put them to sleep. So whatever. No, they're not coming through our smoke. We're coming through the smoke, but they got to play in the rock. So let's bring it. Let's bring it home. Let's keep it home. Let's dominate. Let's dominate and start the ACC out. ACC schedule out on the right foot. As always, guys, thanks for joining us here on CanesCast. We'll be back next week with a recap of Virginia Tech and a look ahead at what's next. Hopefully another dominant victory, this time on the other side of the country, a lot closer to us here where we are in Montana. Late game for everybody on the East Coast. But as always, guys, thank you. Go Canes. It's all about the U.
About the U, baby.